The Southern Upland Way, 215 miles from Port Patrick to Coburn's Path in August and September 2025. After my son Alex graduated from Edinburgh University in July 2019, we took a short mum and son break to explore a few of the places we had long been wanting to visit, including Abbotsford, the home of Sir Walter Scott on the River Tweed. When we arrived at our B&B in Innerleithen on the afternoon prior to our visit, I remember gazing south towards a high ridge in the background, and in response to my curiosity, our B&B host told us that the ridge was where the Southern Upland Way ran. Well, I had never heard of the Southern Upland Way before, but the ridge looked impressive, and I mentally clocked it for further investigation. During our visit, Alex and I constantly felt the pull being exerted by this remote trail and vowed to walk it one day. I was amazed to learn that it is one of Scotland's 4 original Great Trails, and that it is a coast-to-coast trail running for 215 miles across the whole of southern Scotland, from Port Patrick on the west coast to Coburn's Path just south of Dunbar on the east coast, or vice versa if walking in the opposite direction. The Southern Upland Way runs through extremely beautiful and remote countryside, including the Galloway Hills, the Lowther Hills, the Ettrick Hills, and the Lammermuir Hills. En route, it traverses many different types of sparsely populated terrain, including coastal cliffs, open moorland, rolling hills and valleys, farmland, parkland, deciduous and coniferous forests, riverbanks, and locksides. Fast forward to the end of August 2025, 6 years later, and Alex and I arrived in Port Patrick in order to take up the challenge. And make no mistake, walking the Southern Upland Way is a big challenge, and not for the faint-hearted. We had spent years planning it and building up our fitness to a level that would enable us to cope with the 20-plus mile days required, the rugged nature of the terrain, and the total ascent of around 28,000 feet, the equivalent of climbing Mount Everest. Add to the mix the complicated logistics dictated by the remoteness of the trail and the scarcity of accommodation en route, along with the very likely possibility of foul weather and even the notorious midges, and you start to realize that this is no simple undertaking. By this stage, I had walked all the national trails in England and Wales, and 3 of the original 4 Great Trails in Scotland, and a lot more besides, and the Southern Upland Way would be my final one. It would also be the final trail to be included in my book and YouTube project, In My Magical Footsteps. During the planning stages, we spent a long time considering the nuts and bolts of how we were actually going to undertake our mission. We initially thought about camping and backpacking all our gear, but realised that this would not be much fun if we had 14 days of bad weather, and no possibility of being able to dry out our gear each night. Alex is more than capable of carrying a heavy backpack, but I'm no spring chicken, and it would have been tough for me. We then considered hiring a camper van and taking a car so that we could piggyback along the trail. But when we investigated this, I was horrified and incensed to learn that most camper van hire companies will only hire out their vehicles to people between the ages of 25 and 70, and I was 71. In the end, we opted to use one of the very few self-guided walking companies which book your nightly accommodation and arrange for transport and Sherpa services along the route. Not cheap, but having a Sherpa service, a dry bed for the night, and catered meals was worth it for us, although we did find it rather stressful having to meet a taxi at the end of 8 of the 14 days it took us to walk the trail. During our walk, we met just a few other hardy souls who were walking the trail every which way. Some were camping, some were doing a combo of camping and staying at bothies and B&Bs, and one even had a Sherpa husband with a car and caravan for insertion and extraction from the trail each day. We did, however, meet people when we were passing through the picturesque wee villages and the small towns en route, such as Moffat and Melrose. Apparently, fewer than 1,000 people walk the Southern Upland Way each year. Despite all our preparations and being physically more than capable of completing the task, the trail presented us with numerous unexpected challenges. These will generally be covered in more detail as and when they occur in my account of our walk, but here is a summary of some of the main issues we had to deal with. We had heavy rain on 10 of the 14 days it took us to walk the trail. Do not even think about doing this walk if you are not prepared for bad weather. Although the official distance for the Southern Upland Way is 215 miles, we actually ended up walking a total of 278 miles. The distances quoted in my videos are the actual distances we walked, according to my Fitbit. Please see my Day 2 video for more details. The race against Scotland had taken place just 2 weeks before we started our walk. The participants in this ultramarathon have 100 hours to run the whole of the Southern Upland Way, and this year's winner ran it in just 58 hours and 18 minutes. The current course record, set in 2024, is 53 hours and 37 minutes. To put this into perspective, it took us 14 days to walk the trail. Sometimes when I am having to dig deep, comparing the efforts of these superhuman athletes to my own pathetic attempts helped to spur me on. However, we almost felt like we had done our own race across Scotland by the time we had finished, due to the long days we put in on the trail and racing most days to reach our taxi pickups on time. Consequently, we had very little downtime after arriving at our accommodation each evening, having a shower, doing our stretches, drying our gear, and prepping for the next day. On day 2, Alex was horrified to discover that the insoles in his trail shoes had actually carved a gash in the sides of his shoes, and they were no longer waterproof. He considered having some new shoes sent out so that we could pick them up further along the trail, but in the end he decided that he could manage by constantly changing his socks and sometimes using plastic bags over his shoes when it was really wet. There were a lot of bogs, especially on the western half of the trail, and we spent days sloshing our way along waterlogged paths in heavy rain. Most of the places we stayed at had no drying facilities, and it took a long time each evening to get our shoes and gear dry. Because most of the rooms we stayed in were quite cold at night, we usually had to resort to using the hairdryers provided in order to dry out our gear, especially our shoes. Alex killed his mobile phone when it got wet on day 4. Please see my day 4 video for more details about this. On day 5, my packed lunch included a cheese sandwich, which upset my stomach. At least, I thought that the dodgy sandwich was the cause of what developed into turmoil in my whole digestive system, followed by burgeoning anxiety. Please see my day 6 and 7 videos for more details. We walked through a lot of fields with cows in, and on a few occasions, day 5 was a particularly good example, they had bulls in them too. We love cows, and unlike some walkers, they don't worry us, but bulls are a different matter. It is illegal to keep bulls in fields crossed by public footpaths, although there are some exceptions to this. For example, if the bull is less than 10 months old or not of a recognised dairy breed. Beef bulls kept in fields with public access must be accompanied by cows or heifers. Maybe the bulls we came across were covered by these exceptions, and actually none of them seemed to be remotely interested in us anyway. I bruised my knee badly after being felled by a pothole on day 8. Please see my day 8 video for more details about this. On one of our longest days, day 11, I inadvertently took the wrong trail as I left the Three Brethren cairns and ended up walking an extra mile up and down a very steep rocky hill. Please see my day 11 video for more details about this. Things we did right. We had each other. It was a joy to do this walk together, even though we actually walked separately for large parts of each day. Other times we walked together, chatting happily about life, the universe, and all sorts of things in between, including The Lord of the Rings, which for us is the greatest book ever written. We often found ourselves comparing our journey along the Southern Upland Way with the journey undertaken by the Fellowship of the Ring. There are many parallels. This was another great mum and son adventure. We walked the trail from west to east, and in retrospect, this did seem like a good decision because the prevailing southwesterly winds were behind us for most of the way. On our penultimate day, we met several people coming towards us who had started out the previous day and were heading west. One couple had even walked all the way up the Pennine Way before striking across country to join the Southern Upland Way. Although we had lots of midge-busting devices and nets with us, we did not see any. Apparently it was too windy, too wet, and near the end of the midge season anyway. Hitting the gym every day prior to walking the trail and doing other long-distance walks prepared us well physically for walking the Southern Upland Way. I spent more time than usual on the mountain climber at my gym. We had very good gear. I would say having decent footwear and rain gear, etc. is essential. Obviously, selecting suitable items is a very individual matter, but these should be well tried and tested before embarking on a trail like the Southern Upland Way. Over the years, we have experimented with a lot of different gear and equipment, and found what works best for us, but we were extra vigilant about our choices for the Southern Upland Way. Please see my video entitled Walking the Nitty-Gritty for more information about gear, equipment and a lot more besides. Our blister busting strategy worked because, unlike many others who walked this trail, we did not get any blisters. We spent around 20 minutes at the start of each day taping up the vulnerable parts of our feet, and we both wore toe socks. I wore compression toe socks to prevent previous damage to the tendons in my lower legs from reoccurring. Walking the Nitty-Gritty also contains some useful information about injury prevention. We had packed a tick puller in our medical kit. This was a very wise move because Alex got 5 ticks on his legs during our first few days on the trail, probably because he was wearing shorts. I didn't get any because I was always wearing long trousers. Fortunately, we were able to successfully remove the ticks. Walkers should be aware that ticks can cause Lyme disease, a bacterial infection which, if untreated, can cause flu-like symptoms and even severe neurological problems. A bullseye-shaped rash around the bite site is an early symptom. We love our OS Maps app for map reading. We also had paper maps with us just in case it failed, and a compass and survival bag, but fortunately we didn't need to use those. The waymarking and information signs provided along the trail are excellent and well upkept. We could almost have walked the whole trail without consulting our map. Interestingly, for such a remote trail, mobile reception was pretty good for most of the way. Alex brought his drone with him, so we obtained some great drone footage when it wasn't raining or too windy. We took our road walking shoes with us and switched these with our trail shoes for some of the long road and track sections. It was well worth carrying the extra weight in order to make these switches. This is probably not something we would have done if we had been camping, but having the luxury of Sherpa services meant that we could pack extra shoes and gear. We took a packed lunch with us each day and added electrolytes to our water. Electrolytes help the body to maintain fluid balance, support nerve and muscle function, regulate the heartbeat and blood pressure, and convert food into energy. A lack of electrolytes in the system can cause fatigue, irritability, and various other complications. So we like to think that our electrolytes are our secret weapon when doing a long distance walk. We have learnt that having proper fuel is essential. Finally, I believe that the Southern Upland Way has something unique: a treasure hunt. This involves finding 13 kists which have been hidden along the trail and contain coins designed by children from local schools along the trail. These coins depict scenes from Scottish history, wildlife and culture. Clues are provided by our trail signs, which can be found on the way markers to indicate that a kist has been hidden nearby. Clues have been provided by DG Trails and can also be found on one of the Southern Upland Way Facebook pages. Alex and I had huge fun hunting for the kists on our walk, and we actually managed to find them all. Please see videos 1 to 14 for the full story about our adventures on the Southern Upland Way.